I'm very delighted to be here to introduce myself and discuss my research. My name is Jooyoung Kong. I'm an assistant professor at the Sandra Rosenbaum School of Social Work. Today, I will be talking about my research on how adverse childhood experiences, specifically abuse and neglect, can impact intergenerational relationships and caregiving. I want to acknowledge that my current work is supported by NIH, NIA, K01 grant. I'm conducting life course research, which focuses on individuals' development and aging over time and relevant factors for health and well-being. The life course perspective serves as an overarching theoretical framework that emphasizes early life experiences and outcomes in later adulthood. This tree represents the family of origin, the source of your identity, and the most important social group for fostering positive development across the life course. And I want to point out that the long stretch of this tree represents that our relationship with family of origin typically continues to evolve and grow up until later in adulthood. The major focus of life course research is examining the long-term effects of childhood maltreatment. So studies have shown that being maltreated during childhood is associated with negative adult health, potential achievements, or relationship with your spouse or partner, your parenting styles. However, I have found significant research gap in terms of this long reach part of the tree for adults who have been maltreated in the past. So there has been lots of research on the long-term negative effects of childhood maltreatment, but once these individuals reach their adulthood, there were very few systematic investigations about their relationship with family of origin, especially with their aging parents. So today, I will be sharing what I have found and what others have found about these parents and adult children who have been affected by childhood maltreatment. So based on the life course theory and other theories and perspectives about social and intergenerational relationships, I hypothesize that despite abuse and neglect, parent-child relationship will endure. But these adult children may find it particularly challenging to provide care to their parents. More specifically, I developed a conceptual model proposing that parental maltreatment during childhood could negatively affect caregivers' health and well-being, partly because their ongoing relationships with parents may still be challenging. Or these individuals may deal with long-term potential correlates of childhood maltreatment, such as a lack of psychological resources or social support, which can contribute to more stressful caregiving experience. Thankfully, there are national surveys that provide detailed data about maltreatment experiences as children and caregiving status as adults. They are Wisconsin Longitudinal Study, WLS, and Midlife in the US, MIDAS. Both studies longitudinally surveyed a large sample of older adults, and I want to note that the samples primarily consist of non-Hispanic whites with higher levels of education and income. So I will now move on to discuss the research findings on this topic. Before delving into caregiving, I want to start by addressing this question of how a history of childhood maltreatment affect adults' relationship with their abusive and neglectful parents. To answer this question, I used the intergenerational solidarity theory developed by the sociologist Bengtson and his colleagues, who defined the bond or solidarity between aging parents and adult children using 6 distinct elements, including emotional closeness, contact, or support exchange, filial obligation, and so on. The key premise of this theory is that stronger solidarity can enhance individuals' health and well-being. So using this conceptual framework, I explored the long-term effects of childhood maltreatment on these different aspects of intergenerational relationship in later adulthood, except for filial obligation, which was not available in the data sources that I mentioned. So this paper is one of the studies that examined the research question. I analyzed longitudinal data from WLS respondents from their mid-50s to early 70s. I tested the hypotheses that childhood abuse and neglect would negatively affect adult children's emotional closeness, contact frequency, and support exchange with abusive parents. My hypotheses were partially supported. I found that mother's childhood abuse was associated with lower levels of emotional closeness with aging mother, but not in terms of contact frequency and support exchange. Likewise, father's childhood abuse was associated with lower levels of emotional closeness with aging fathers, but not in terms of contact frequency and support exchange. Childhood neglect, which I couldn't differentiate whether it was by mothers or father, was also associated with lower levels of emotional closeness and less frequent support exchange with aging mothers. So both in cross-sectional and longitudinal analysis, I have consistently found that the emotional aspects of the relationship seems to be negatively affected by this history of childhood maltreatment. So these results may indicate that overall, these adult children may have functional interactions with their parents while they also feel a reduced sense of closeness to them. So with these results in mind, I want to move on to address the key question of how history of child maltreatment affects the experience and outcomes of caregiving for aging parents. I want to highlight the percentage of caregivers who reported a history of childhood maltreatment. The frequency that I will be showing you varied depending on the data sources and how I conceptualized abuse and neglect based on the available measures in the survey. So using data from the WLS, I found that among caregivers of aging parents, about 9% reported a history of childhood neglect, 10% reported a history of emotional, physical, or sexual abuse. In a study in which I replicated the same research question using the MIDAS data sets, I found that about 26% of caregivers of aging parents reported emotional or physical abuse and provided care to their abusive parent. In another study, using a slightly bigger sample from the MIDAS, I found that 24% of caregivers of mothers reported that a history of abuse and neglect from their mothers during childhood. So using these particular data sets, I could find a prevalent number of caregivers affected by childhood maltreatment. But then, why would they provide care, right? What would be the motivations for caregiving despite abuse and neglect? This question was thoroughly addressed in the dissertation by Dr. Jamie Goldberg, my former doctoral student and now a faculty member at the School of Social Work. The common theme, which is also found in other references as well, is that some individuals feel they have no other choice but to take on the caregiving roles. Other reasons include a sense of moral obligation to care for their own parents or religious beliefs, and specific family dynamics that they have always been the caregiver within the family. I could also find some positive motivations as well, such as having a sense of empathy towards their parents or wanting to have another chance to restore the relationships. Additionally, some mentioned financial benefits associated with providing care to their parents. I want to share some brief quotes from different qualitative studies. The first one is related to their family dynamics. This is how I was raised. I spent a lot of time raising my brothers and sister in my mom's absence because she was drunk. And so it's just what I know how to do and what I'm good at. Second one is related to the obligation piece. We consider him as our father. He's still our father. We will help them until the very end because they are our parents and not because of what they did or did not do for us. Lastly, some caregivers seem to have a desire to be a different person than their parents. So the reason I wanted to be a caregiver to show my mother that I was good at it and that I could take care of her. I'm going to show you how I will look after you and how you could have looked after me. So this is a list of mixed motives, but one thing in common is that these adult children enter these roles with the risk of being harmed again. So I have consistently found that caregivers with history of childhood maltreatment showed worse mental health outcomes than their non-maltreated counterparts. They showed more frequent depressive symptoms, higher daily negative affect, lower life satisfaction, less psychological well-being, and poorer self-rated mental health. I also want to discuss some intervening factors that can make the caregiving particularly challenging for these adults with histories of childhood maltreatment. And these were all empirically tested. And these are the factors, mainly the correlates of childhood maltreatment, meaning some certain characteristics that may have resulted from the abuse experienced in childhood. So these include specific coping strategies involving avoidance or denial, a sense of low self-concept, like self-esteem, self-acceptance, or lack of control over their environment. Additionally, current or ongoing relational difficulties may play a role. So I found that lack of family support and strained family relationship, as well as poor relationship quality with abusive parent, specifically low levels of emotional closeness to their abusive parent, as we've been seeing, all were associated with greater negative health effects for those who have been abused. So these findings support the concept of cumulative disadvantage. The main idea is that childhood disadvantages add up over time that can result in significant gaps, disparities, or outcome in terms of the later life health, later life outcomes, including health, finances, or social connections. In other words, these caregivers had a very challenging experiences during childhood, and they continue to struggle with the effects of these experiences, which may lead them to have negative experience and outcomes as caregivers. From the qualitative studies, we can further find some sources of negative caregiving outcome. One pervasive theme from the qualitative studies is ambivalence, mixed feelings or thoughts towards their parents. So this quote says, "For us, they are just a burden. We all say that if they did not exist, it would make our lives much easier. But on the other hand, I say, once my parents, always my parents." So these conflicting thoughts and feelings are known to negatively affect individuals' physical and mental health. Caregiving experience can also be re-traumatizing. Caregivers may experience triggers, flashbacks, or similar violent experiences during the delivery of care. I want to share a powerful quote from Jamie's dissertation, and will only read the bold letters. Every last visit is excruciating, and I think this partially goes back to the childhood stuff. And as a small child, you believe that if I only could get it right, say the right thing, do the right thing, my mother would be a normal person. And now I have that experience all over again, so to be in that helpless, powerless place again. Jamie also noted that this re-traumatizing experience was more frequently reported by those caring for parents with dementia. But then I also want to point out that there is a group of caregivers who are incredibly resilient and make the caregiving experience into the one that can truly liberate them from the cycle of harm. The first quote says, "It was the hardest year of my life. I'm glad I walked through the end of her life with her. It was messy and painful, but I made it through. She's gone now, and I have forgiven her." Mom changed. That turning point of her getting sober was really motivating for me. That bond is very strong, such that I cannot let what was inflicted on me during childhood take control over everything. I've chosen for it to be in the past, and I've chosen to forgive her. I found the last sentence of this quote really powerful, because this person is talking about making a decision and taking ownership of this complex situation, whether to forgive or not to forgive, whether to caregive or not to caregive. Having a sense of choice and control will be the key that can empower these caregivers themselves, and also help them to gain, regain, or maintain their power, control, and safety. I want to share some thoughts and insights about what can help these caregivers with history of harm. I mentioned earlier, empowerment through increased control and self-care is very crucial. First and foremost, it will be important to go through a healing journey, either through personal reflection or therapeutic sessions. The focus should be on better understanding oneself, having greater knowledge about oneself, about what is it really what I want, what I don't want, what I feel or think in the moment. Having greater self-awareness and knowledge and intentional choices based on such knowledge can be very empowering. The same idea applies to the following 4 points that can be really helpful in the caregiving context in terms of practicing boundaries, seeking support, using adaptive coping strategies that can nurture themselves, and prioritizing self-care as much as you care for others. Also, I don't see this issue entirely as an individual problem, so expanding policies and programs to support family caregivers, such as expanding respite care, providing affordable adult daycare services, or providing financial support will help these caregivers exercise control and choice. Key limitations include that the WLS-MIDAS sample may not fully represent other racial ethnic groups or individuals with low socioeconomic status. Quantitative approaches also involve some methodological challenges, such as relying on retrospective self-reports of childhood maltreatment. So moving forward, I aim to diversify study sample, methodological approaches, and address unexplored topics such as estrangement, sibling dynamics, or grief processes for these caregivers. The life course approach to caregiving is highly relevant, promising, and important because it allows for more comprehensive and holistic understanding of these caregivers and their relationship with their care recipients. As you've been seeing, these relational histories can have a profound impact on caregivers' day-to-day interactive experiences and their health and well-being. I want to wrap up with this last remark. Life course research does not aim to dwell on the past. It aims to understand the past to live better in the present and ultimately contribute to the active exercise of personal agency in shaping every aspect of life's journey. Thank you.